Here is some of the facts that the mainstream media will tell you about the shooter. For those, I think everyone knows now, but a man drove across the country to Washington, D.C. to shoot two National Guards people, one woman, one man. The man is still clinging to life. The woman has died of her wounds. This was right outside the White House here in the United States. And the National Guard suspect was in one of the CIA's Zero units. So this is from the Washington Post. Ramanullah Lockenwall, 29, who officials say drove across the country to carry out Wednesday's attack, was detained moments after opening fire. Lockenwall was five when the U.S. and allied forces invaded Afghanistan in the aftermath of September 11th, marking the start of what would become the U.S.'s longest war. We like to call it a war, even though it's an invasion. You mean our longest invasion? No, that wouldn't really be true, because we continue to invade countries long after we've ended the so-called war on them. I believe we're still technically invading Iraq, aren't we? Washington Post actually did coverage on how the Pentagon had spent billions and billions of dollars on schools in Afghanistan didn't exist. Soldiers in Afghanistan didn't exist. All kinds of things in Afghanistan that didn't technically exist. We did a lot. 2 decades later, so he lived in a war zone basically his entire childhood while the United States disrupted and destroyed Afghanistan. 2 decades later, Lockenwall was among tens of thousands of Afghan nationals who came to the U.S. as part of Operation Allies Welcome, a Biden-era program to bring to the United States those who had helped us fight their own people in Afghanistan. But it gets deeper. CIA Director John Radcliffe said Lockenwall had been a member of a partner force in Kandahar, a province in southern Afghanistan that saw significant fighting during the war. Lockenwall was part of one of the CIA's Zero units that was involved in combat missions to seize or kill suspected terrorists, according to several people familiar. First, we were hearing that, he was allied with the CIA to protect people at the air base when we were leaving Afghanistan. Well, boy, that is the nice way of saying, of ignoring the larger aspect, which is to seize and kill suspected terrorists. And what does the U.S. call suspected terrorists? Pretty much any military-age male in Afghanistan, I think we called a terrorist at one point or another. So this guy was part of the CIA effort to run around Afghanistan murdering people, many of them completely innocent. Even the ones who were not quote-unquote innocent were fighting an invading force. The Zero units, also known as National Strike Units, were involved in dangerous and often deadly night raids. Oh, it's funny how night raids can become deadly for the people who've decided to run into someone's house in the middle of the night and start shooting them and their family. It's funny how quickly that type of thing can become a little dangerous for the people running in and shooting families. Night raids and other missions to kill or capture members of the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, other terrorist groups, other things we claim are terrorists. Could be a 95-year-old. Well, we'll call that military age male. Why not? Could be a wedding party. Yeah, but you don't know what that wedding party was up to. The CIA and U.S. military provided intelligence and logistical support to the squads. The CIA has never publicly acknowledged its work with the Zero units. Yeah, it didn't really publicly acknowledge anything, which have been shadowed by allegations of human rights violations, including a 2019 Human Rights Watch report that found they had conducted summary executions and other abuses. I think that counts as ex-CIA. Yes, it's slightly different than being an American in the CIA, but still, that's former CIA in my book. Here's what you won't get from the mainstream media, no matter what. They so rarely say this. Now, I know that this is not technically a mass shooting because mass shootings have to involve 4 or more people that were shot with bullets. So this is not technically on the list of mass shootings or killings, but it is a well-known event involving murder in the U.S. public eye right now. I have brought this to many people's attention many times, but you don't hear it much. And the only one really collecting these stats that I've seen is David Swanson at World Beyond War. And he does updates on this. This is not just, he didn't just collect these stats one time and then stop. He continues to update his stats on how many mass shooters are connected to U.S. military. This actually says specifically our veterans. 32% of all the mass shooters in the United States are veterans. The reason I say connected to the military is if you were to add to that number the number of mass shooters who have had some connection to U.S. military, there's several more beyond just the 32% that have some connection to U.S. military. The overall point is that yet again, we have a well-known example of violence in America, of murder in America that is connected in one way or another to the U.S. military. This one happens to be an Afghan national who has come to the United States, but he was part of U.S. military efforts and CIA efforts in Afghanistan. It is amazing the amount of carnage that is connected to the U.S. military. And you will rightfully see the media talk about violence and this horrific moment of violence and things like that. What you won't hear, which is what my Substack column is about, it's free to read, by the way, is that they won't use that term, violence, to define so much of the corporate violence against Americans that is done every day. And I go through a long list on my Substack with links to every single one. Is allowing people to die or fall ill due to lead pipes in Flint, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and thousands of other cities across America, does that not count as violence when they know it's happening and they could stop it for what would be, relative to the richest people in the world, a couple of pennies rubbed together? Is allowing citizens to lose their lives to cancer from Teflon chemicals dumped in the water or from preventable oil spills not violence? Is allowing tens of thousands to die every year due to our dumpster fire healthcare system not violence? Is allowing 15 million to lose their healthcare during a pandemic and therefore fearing to go to the hospital even when they're sick, does that not count as violence? Is imprisoning millions of people for years for non-violent crimes not violence? You get the idea. If any of you would like to read that column, please go over to reallycamp.substack.com. It is free to read there, and please subscribe for free if you have a second. I would like to thank you all. My Substack has been growing, and it's like 38 in Substack's World Politics list. It actually got into the top 100 bestsellers on Substack. Bestseller just means paid subscribers. It actually cracked the top 100 there for a minute. It was number 98 on Substack's bestsellers. It really is helping this show keep going. It's helping my work keep going. Can't thank you enough for that support. If you have I think if you were to pay for a year, you'd be paying $6.67 a month if you pay for the full year at once. And if you don't have $6.67, then just become a free subscriber. reallycamp.substack.com.